Good morning. The Paul story is really inspiring, and what makes me really surprised is how similar his story is to my story of a Chinese entrepreneur. As you can see here, this guy is called Pan Shiyi. He was born in 1963, and in an impoverished inland province of Gansu in China. And if you happen to know a little bit about modern Chinese history, you might understand that the 60s were among the most chaotic after the Communist Party took power in 1949. So what happened during that 10 years of time is there's great famine and there's cultural revolution, leaving hundreds of millions of people in deep poverty. And Pan's family was extremely unfortunate. They are extremely short of food and can't afford to buy anything. He can't buy pencils when he was in primary school. And his parents have to give his little sister away to prevent any family members from starving to death. So for him, the childhood dreams was rather simple, just to get rid of this extreme poverty and one day, probably, hopefully, will become rich and successful and gain respect from other people. So his first chance came in 1979 when China resumes its college entrance examination. Pan took the test and got accepted by a local vocational school. And 2 years later, he got transferred to a better school in Hebei province because of his exceptional academic performance. So after graduation, he got into the oil ministry in China. At that time, it's a really decent job for ordinary Chinese. But it is because his dream to become rich and successful that keeps him going, and he finally decided to resign from his job and go to Shenzhen and later Hainan, the two hot hubs for the startups at that time. So he went to Shenzhen. At first, he thought he could start some kind of life like an entrepreneur, a decent life like an entrepreneur. But he doesn't have enough money. So he started the kind of life like a migrant worker, what Tom mentioned about, just like the workers building bridges in Shanghai. So he carried bricks. He did all kinds of things that he can find. He even took jobs like tour guide and also doing small computer education, all those kinds of stuff. And finally, he got his chance in 1991. He started a small company called Wantong with 6 of his friends. And it was in a new business area, which is commercial building development. They don't have much money, so they got some loans from the small loan sharks, local small loan sharks, and also got some money from the state-owned banks. So it was a huge gamble. But because of the huge untapped Chinese market, they got success. And finally, in 1995, he got cashed out, and using that money, he started a company of his own. And now his personal wealth is over 19 billion RMB, which is about $3 billion US. And after his success, he supports like thousands of university students, poor university students in China. So that could be a story for our Paul in the future. So this Pan's story was rather typical for the entrepreneurs in China. Actually, according to the Hurun list, China has created more than 230 billionaire entrepreneurs in the past 3 decades. And more than 70% of them came from not so wealthy families, just as Pan's. So it was the eagerness to escape from the extreme poverty and the comparatively equal opportunity to get higher education and the huge untapped Chinese market that really makes them successful. So here I'm going to look back a little bit to share with you 3 major waves of entrepreneurs during this 30 years' time. The first wave of entrepreneurship came right after 1978 when China adopts its economic opening up policy. It is interesting to know that before this reform, China was in a central planned economy. Maybe you're living in the United States, you don't have an idea what central planned economy works. It's just like when you want to buy anything, you have to get those small special permit to buy anything you want. So after that 1978, there's 1 billion people in China for the first time, although with all kinds of restrictions, for the first time they can buy things freely as they want. So this created a huge gap between the supply of the state-owned factories and the demand of these 1 billion people. So this is where the first group of entrepreneurs find their opportunity. So in this photo, you can see it's a narrow street between mainland China and Hong Kong, which is now in Shenzhen called Zhongying Street. And every day, tens of thousands of entrepreneurs just traveling from all parts of China, sometimes for 20 or 30 hours on train, going to this narrow street, purchasing those special day pass to go onto the Hong Kong side to buy things. And they were not allowed to bring these things back, so they asked local villagers to help them smuggle the things back into the Chinese border. And with huge bags, they travel back like 20 or 30 hours back to where they live and sell them to the local consumers. That is pretty much what happened in China in the 80s. That is the people's understanding of private business and entrepreneurship during that time. Entrepreneurs is much or less like smugglers and street vendors that in people's mind. Maybe you may have those kind of strange feelings. Why we do this? It's certainly not a very effective system. We can just produce it ourselves and sell it locally. But unfortunately, we have lots of restrictions and laws inherited from old communist ages. Some of the restrictions you might find rather interesting, like private business owners can't hire more than 7 people, because according to Karl Marx's Das Kapital, when private business hiring more than 7 people is a clear sign that the capitalist is exploiting its innocent worker. And also there's other restrictions, like private companies can be sued or tried or even charged for competing with state-owned factories for raw material and this kind of things. So it was not until the early 1990s that China have revoked these laws and really have started the story of Made in China that we all know. So we're all so familiar about. And during this period of time, comparing to the foreign direct investment and the flooding, the new technology flooding inside China, I think there's something really interesting happening. That is inside people's mind. That is the change of ideas of how entrepreneurs behave and how entrepreneurs do. So during this period of time, entrepreneurs is rather well-educated, hardworking, and keen on learning. This young man is called Zhang Ruimin, and what he is doing is he's smashing down a malfunctioned refrigerator in the factory he manages, which is the Qingdao refrigerator factory. And it was unimaginable in China at that time for 3 reasons. First is that, in the old communist past, wasting things is rather similar to like doing crimes. And also, this kind of things is extremely expensive at that time. The cost of building such a refrigerator is similar to the normal worker's 2 years of income. So people just think he's insane. And also there's another major fact that people think he's insane is that even if the refrigerator is malfunctioned, because of the old central planned system, they can still sell it. People will buy it and going back and fix it and use it. So that's how it works in the old times. So what Zhang Ruimin did is just to showing all his workers that it is a new age. We have to adjust to the new business rules. We have to build our brand and to introduce in some kind of quality control to make our customers satisfied. So this is what happening in the 1990s. And if we call 1990 as a decade for manufacturing, and 2000 would be definitely a year of intensive R&D and producing of quality products. I may not have time to go over all these companies, but I just want to pick two really interesting ones. One is Tencent. Probably some of you know its product called QQ, which even in China we sometimes call them kind of like shameless copycat. They copied that from the AOL's ICQ. But what he did is, by gradually evolving its idea, this company has created kind of like the world's first social network and started social gaming industry like 7 years before Zynga came out. So during this period of time, this kind of entrepreneurs are really good at improving existing ideas. Sometimes they steal ideas from like American entrepreneurs, but they are really good at improving those. But there's still not so much real innovation here. So what will be happening in the next 10 years? It is my sincere hope that there will be more authentic innovations that happening in China. I used to have those kind of conception that the Chinese engineers and Chinese entrepreneurs might not be good at inventing new things. But here, these two photos might give you a different idea. On the right-hand side, yeah, there's it is probably the world's first VCD player, which was built by two Chinese engineers. And the left side is probably the world's first prototype for USB flash disk. So they were both created by Chinese engineers, but it was not patented. The first one they started a company called Wan Yan and selling this kind of things. The first 1,000 of this machine was shipped out and bought by their competitors, both inside China and abroad. They reverse engineered it, and the market share for this company just dropped dramatically, and it got bankrupt in like 3 or 5 years' time. And the other one just didn't bother to start up a company. He just sell this prototype to. Actually, that guy is a graduate student in Tsinghua University, and he showed this kind of things on. We have an annual science fair called Challenge Cup, and he showed this kind of prototype on that events, and some company just bought his prototype and together with the technology. So it might be the lack of conception of protecting intellectual property, and also the lack of entrepreneurial education that really stops China from stepping into an innovative kind of economy. But I do see some interesting changes in China. Like here is a really interesting place in Beijing where lots of startups just gathering here. It is called Garage Cafe, which you can see in this photo. For less than $200 US per month, a small team can just rent a small table like this for 1 month, and they got complimentary Wi-Fi, complimentary business card printing service, complimentary cloud service, and complimentary testing cell phones. Pretty much all the things you need to start up an mobile internet company. And there's also, like here, which is the entrepreneurial leadership course I worked for during the past 4 years. As you can see, it's kind of like the most popular one in Tsinghua University. It's a classroom of 500 people. And more than half of them are just entrepreneurs from around. We give the tickets away for free to these entrepreneurs. Now when we started in 2006, we are like the only one here. But after that, only in like 5 or 6 years time, there's like more than 500 events of this kind, teaching entrepreneurs, having like interview with really successful entrepreneurs, or teaching the entrepreneurs how to do accounting and do legal stuff. So the message I want to deliver is not how cheap it is to start a company in China, but it is after 30 years, finally, in China, this group of entrepreneurs who moved the Chinese economy forward got the kind of respect and the kind of support they deserve. Thank you. I'm not quite sure if I still have time. Oh, okay. So, okay.
Hi, Katie Mark. I'm from University of Chicago Booth, class of 2013. Thank you. This was incredibly interesting. One question I have for you. Given that the Chinese government in its latest 10-year plan has emphasized this innovation over imitation point that you referenced, what sort of support is the government giving to entrepreneurs, and how does that kind of relate to the state-owned enterprise-dominated economy?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. It's totally unexpected. Yeah. Actually, what's happening in China is like for the average state-owned enterprises, the average growth is like less than 4%. But for private business, it's more than 14% during the past like 20 years. So when China, you might know that China also come through some kind of economic difficulty during this period of time. So probably I would say that in the future, the government will most likely to give more space for the private sectors to grow and trying to fix its economy in a good way. But I really don't know what will be happening in the future. We have to see that. And regarding intellectual property and this kind of things, I don't know if it is proper to say, but it is my prediction that probably in 5 or 10 years, China might become the world's largest market for intellectual property trade, because there's already lots of science showing this. Thank you.
Hi, Adina Taylor from MIT Sloan 2013. So you started to touch on some of the IP challenges and what China's doing to move past that. But how do you see China evolving in the world's eye? And I know there's a lot of issues that some countries have faced where they feel like the intellectual property has been tweaked by China over the years. And how does the rest of the world come to support the entrepreneurship spirit in China?
Yeah. Sorry for my English English listening comprehension. Can you make the question simpler so that I can understand?
Yeah, sorry. Over the years, the rest of the world has seen a lot of its technologies modified as opposed to being newly invented within China. So as this effort towards entrepreneurship is underway, how do you see China instilling confidence in the rest of the world that it's going to be working on its own innovation?
I think it's not who would like to do something this kind of stuff, but it's more like it's under pressure. If the Chinese companies, they want to compete globally, and if they want to still grow at that speed, they have to first gone out of the seemingly end this price war, and then to find some really innovative things that hasn't been created by like the United States entrepreneurs. And I think it's happening, and it also would be a trend. If we can't we are not successful in doing this, probably you may see China will just follow Japan, like having 10 years or 20 years of really economic difficulty. I don't know if I answers your question. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy, for doing the presentation.
Oh, Hi.
Brian Krug, class of 2005 HBS. In the 1990s in the United States, when the tech boom was happening, when the internet boom was happening, you'd see most of the most talented people were leaving top universities and going out and starting startups on their own and things like that.
Yeah.
So the model, instead of going to work on Wall Street, people were going to start startups. Are you seeing the same thing now in China, where the top students out of Tsinghua are choosing to do startups as opposed to going to work for state-owned enterprises and things like that? Or at the very top, are you finding people are still going in the traditional jobs as opposed to going out and taking a chance with an entrepreneurial venture?
Thank you for the question. From what I see is, although there's still a majority of college graduates are coming to those like private companies or state-owned enterprises, but more and more students, college students, willing to take part in some kind of entrepreneurial events or entrepreneurial kind of experiment. And what I can tell you is a rather interesting story, because my where I live is just across the street from Tsinghua University, and that is a small apartment complex. And in that small, just in my building, there's like 20 or 30 small apartments, and like 2 or 3 of them ran by the student entrepreneurs from Tsinghua, because they want to save money so that they can live there, they can do all things there, and they can use internet at a really low price. So that kind of thing didn't happen in like 2 or 3 years ago, but it's happening now, and it's getting more and more popular. And another example would be Amy Pang is also starting her own company. And you may see more civil scholar and more CS graduates from Tsinghua each year will be doing its own startup. And I think that could be a trend. Thank you.
Jimmy, thank you.
Thanks.